to the Supreme Court. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. We are glad you are here with us. A lot of motion on the stock market this afternoon. Almost all tariffs are paused, and a monster winning day on Wall Street, the largest one-day increase in the history of the market. As you take a look behind me, as traders pounce on a 90-day tariff pause announced by President Trump. The previous Dow record of 2,112 was set after the initial post-COVID sell-off in March of 2020. Today, the Dow closes up 2,962.86 points, nearly clearing all losses since last Thursday.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know? They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid. A deal's going to be made with every one of them, and they'll be fair deals. I just want fair. They will be fair deals for everybody.
Everybody is seeing a return to 10% tariffs, with reciprocal tariffs paused, except for one major exception. China was not spared. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar on Capitol Hill with a look at whether or not a potential trade war with China could still destabilize American business.
After digging in his heels and saying his worldwide tariffs are here to stay, President Trump shocking many Wednesday afternoon by putting out a Truth Social post announcing he's putting a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs on trading partners, except for China.
No other president would have done what I did, and it had to be done.
And we've just been overwhelmed by the response from mostly our allies who want to come and negotiate in good faith.
For China, President Trump now putting a 125% import tax on Chinese goods coming into the U.S. after China raised tariffs on American goods to 84% starting April 10th.
As I said a week ago today, don't retaliate, hold your ground, let's see what happens. And China, they kept escalating and escalating.
The pause on reciprocal tariffs on other trading partners may, for now, ease fears of congressional Republicans worried about political survival, as their constituents are already worried about taking a financial hit.
As I talk to my farmers, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, because when we get into a trade war, usually the first pawn in the trade war is agriculture.
In his post, the president says, at some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. China said Tuesday, should the U.S. persist in this reckless course, China will respond resolutely until the end.
What I'm certain of is that what China is doing will affect their economy much more than it will ours.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says he thinks this will ultimately be resolved between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping.
China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. You know, it's one of those things they don't know how quite. They're proud people.
But that could be complicated by even more tariffs just around the corner.
So we're going to be announcing very shortly a major tariff on pharmaceuticals. And when they hear that, they will leave China, they will leave other places.
Trump's pause caught many here in Congress off guard. Top Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer called it all chaos and said the president essentially caved to market pressure. One Republican source also told me he thinks the president got nervous by all the stock market losses. Congresswoman Lisa McClain, she's the number 4 House Republican, told me it's essentially the art of the deal, that the president will always make his expectations clear, but he will never reveal what he won't do. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Meantime, a federal appeals court has refused to halt a judge's order requiring the Trump administration to rehire thousands of federal workers. A split panel for the Court of Appeals found that workers who were let go must appeal dismissals through a separate process. The administration was required to inform the states 60 days before any reduction in the force, which was not adhered to. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has released a statement regarding her creation of the Second Amendment Task Force. Bondi says the task force will combine department-wide policy and litigation resources to advance President Trump's pro-gun agenda. The efforts will use government policy to push back on attempts to limit gun rights. Bondi is working on this initiative alongside Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. And meantime, Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel in Fort Lauderdale today, highlighting another large drug bust off the coast of Florida. 45,000 pounds of cocaine and another 3,800 pounds of marijuana seized in the operations. 11 people have been arrested in connection. The Coast Guard says since February, it's seized over 59 metric tons of narcotics. The Attorney General said these new shipments have cartel fingerprints all over it.
We believe two cartels, CJ&G and Sinaloa, were heavily tied to these shipments. This is a major blow to their financial operations and their efforts to distribute drugs throughout our country.
All suspects are in custody after a shooting in Virginia that killed 3 people and injured at least 3 others yesterday. Today, the Spotsylvania Sheriff's Office said 4 teenagers are facing charges. An early investigation shows the shooting followed an illegal gun sale or robbery. Authorities are expected to release more details later today. And on Capitol Hill, the debate over local versus federal law enforcement on immigration issues took center stage once again, with backers of sanctuary laws insisting they help keep their communities safe. Those opposed say the only people they keep safe are criminal migrants. Here's Christine Frizzell with the latest.
A disturbing update in the case of 13-year-old Oscar Omar Hernandez, who went missing last month. His body discovered on the side of the road in Oxnard, California. The suspect, Mario Edgardo Garcia Aquino, an undocumented immigrant from El Salvador, already under investigation by the LA County District Attorney's Office for sexually assaulting at least 2 other teenage boys.
Mr. Garcia Aquino was his soccer coach.
In Fairfax County, Virginia, twice deported Wilmer Osmani Ramon Giron was released from prison after just 2 months, despite facing 15 years for felony strangulation of his ex-wife. A plea deal he made with Commonwealth attorney Steve Descano, who pledges on his website to make plea decisions that limit or avoid immigration consequences.
Somebody like Descano clearly views himself as a social worker instead of a prosecutor. That's not your role. Your job as a prosecutor is to vigorously protect your citizens.
How to best protect citizens, front and center on Capitol Hill.
You can't have public safety when you're releasing lawbreakers into the community.
We know that when local police act as immigration agents, immigrant communities and their families are less likely to come forward to report a crime when they are a witness or even a victim.
A struggle playing out in rural Adams County in Washington state, whose sheriff is being sued for sharing information with federal immigration officials in violation of state law.
Rather than allowing law enforcement agencies to work at local, state, and federal levels together, sanctuary policies force us to rearrest individuals who could have been transferred to federal custody. This strains our jails, wastes tax money, and puts residents at unnecessary risk.
And here on Capitol Hill, House Republicans have just proposed a new bill that seeks to amend the Immigration and Nationality Act, adding property crimes like arson, trespassing, and vandalism to a list that requires mandatory detention and likely deportation to undocumented immigrants. It's called the Safeguarding American Property Act, Dee Dee.
So expanding the scope of potential crimes there, Christine. Hasn't President Trump already threatened some of these cities and states with sanctuary laws?
Yeah, so both the Department of Justice and the Department of Transportation have already threatened to withhold federal funds, including billions of dollars for roads and highways, to anyone who refuses to work with the federal government. Now, we should say that President Trump did try something similar his first term, and it was met with multiple lawsuits.
Put a bookmark there. All right, Christine Frizzell reporting live from Washington, D.C. Thank you. 5 Venezuelans the government identified as Tren de Aragua gang members cannot be deported. Today, a federal judge in Texas temporarily blocked their deportation as legal challenges continue. A judge in New York plans to issue a similar order. The Supreme Court ruled on Monday suspected Venezuelan gang members can be deported under the Alien Enemies Act, but must have a chance to defend themselves. The acting head of the IRS plans to resign following the agency's data sharing deal with the Department of Homeland Security. Commissioner Melanie Krause's decision comes a week before tax day, typically the agency's busiest time of the year. The Wall Street Journal reports Krause is worried about President Trump's handling of the IRS. She'll be the third IRS chief to exit this year. It is now just a few minutes past the deadline for the federal government to provide evidence supporting its efforts to deport student activist Mahmoud Khalil. This deadline was imposed yesterday by a judge in Louisiana, according to one of Khalil's lawyers. His team argues there's no evidence of the government's claims, including that Khalil led anti-Semitic protests. The judge said she will end the case by Friday if there's not enough evidence. Federal funding for Cornell and Northwestern universities now on hold. Officials say the Trump administration halted over $1 billion for Cornell and around $790 million for Northwestern. Both universities are under federal investigation for suspected civil rights violations. The administration has threatened to pull funding from schools allowing anti-Semitism on campus. At noon tonight, ground rules are being established for the trial of Brian Kohberger, charged in the killings of 4 University of Idaho students. At a hearing today, the judge considered what evidence should be admitted at trial, whether Kohberger should face the death penalty if convicted, and who should be allowed in the courtroom. Jury selection is scheduled to begin July 30th. The trial slated to start August 11th. And here is a live look over Albany, New York, where the Second Circuit Court of Appeals is hearing a challenge brought by a mid-Vermont Christian school whose girls' basketball team has been banned from competition. The team says their First Amendment rights have been violated. Last year, the school had forfeited a game against a team that had a biological male player, citing fairness and safety concerns. In response, Vermont Principals Association saying the team broke state discrimination policies. State and local courts have sided with the Principals Association. If the ban is upheld after today's appeal, the school plans to appeal to the Supreme Court. And we are learning tonight Redmond Sullivan, a biological male fencer, is no longer on the Wagner College women's fencing team. Sullivan gained attendance last week when a female, when a female opponent took a knee instead of competing at the Cherry Blossom Open in Maryland. It is not clear if Sullivan resigned voluntarily or was kicked off the team by Wagner. But a Wagner spokesperson said they are in full compliance with the NCAA and NEC rules and regulations that limit men's participation on women's teams. Coming up, the latest on President Trump's plan for major tax cuts as lawmakers continue to have trouble reaching an agreement. Then a disturbing trend towards political violence. The large amount of Americans who say it's somewhat okay to hurt the president, according to a new poll. Then the steps being taken in Texas to remove an unconstitutional law targeting same-sex relationships. We'll be right back. Right now, President Trump's blueprint vision for major tax cuts hanging in the balance. The House of Representatives voting on whether or not they will take the Senate budget resolution passed late Friday night into Saturday morning. Republicans can afford to lose only 3 votes, while as many as 7 Republicans have indicated they oppose the bill. Without an agreement, both chambers are back to the drawing board before they can move forward on a new budget. President Trump's pick to lead NASA, Jared Isaacman, wants to.
I am not a typical nominee for this position. I've been relatively apolitical. I am not a scientist.
A Tesla charging station, this time in Lacey, Washington. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but broken pieces of the charging station could be seen scattered across the parking lot. This happened yesterday.
It's kind of scary. I couldn't imagine if someone got hit, you know. It's kind of scary. There's people here all times of the night.
This comes as attacks on Tesla businesses and against Tesla owners continue across the country as CEO Elon Musk remains tied to the Trump administration. New polling data shows that an increasing number of people.
The results found support for political violence against President Trump and Elon Musk is growing, specifically within segments of the U.S. public.
Stanley Schwartz, a history professor, tells us violence has a long history in American democracy, but it was still striking to read through this report.
I was dismayed and saddened to see those results.
To assess support for political violence, all 1,264 people surveyed by NCRI were asked to classify their political ideology. The survey defining left of center as those who chose far left, liberal, and slightly liberal. The results among that group reflecting assassination culture appears to be emerging.
A lot of folks on the left are probably feeling a sense of hopelessness or despair following the election loss.
Let's take a look at some of the numbers. Some 38% of total respondents said it would be somewhat justified to murder President Trump. Also 31% saying the exact same thing about Elon Musk. But for those self-identifying in that left group, those numbers grew to 48% and then also 55% respectively.
People are feeling an era of authoritarianism, not an era of persuasion, of calm negotiation.
Daryl Paulson, who specializes in political parties and elections, tells us there used to be rules in how you conducted politics, but those rules don't exist anymore.
Those rules of the games have been thrown out, and it's every man for himself.
But if that doesn't change and the violence continues, he believes results like this survey found will only continue.
And unless we can get by this, we're in for a very long, difficult stretch in American politics.
Now, the survey also looked at support for destroying Teslas. Take a look here. 39% of total respondents say that it's partially acceptable, with 57% of those left of center saying the exact same thing. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
A recall of Tostitos Cantina-style corn chips is now in the most dangerous category. The FDA elevated it to Class 1, meaning there's a risk of serious health problems or death. Frito-Lay first recalled the chips last month because some bags contain nacho cheese corn chips. Those contain milk, which is not listed on the bags. Those with milk allergies should throw them out or return them. There are now more than 600 cases of measles in the U.S., raising concerns this will soon become a nationwide outbreak. Medical reporter Liz Bonas asked an infectious disease provider what makes this virus so contagious.
It's a hardy virus, so it'll last in the environment for 2 hours. So somebody could be in a classroom and had early measles where they don't even have the rash yet. They can cough it out. You can come in there an hour later, inhale that air, and get measles. So that's why it's so incredibly contagious.
It's also why infectious disease specialist Dr. Stephen Blatt of Ohio's Tri-Health told me there's a few things we all should know about reducing measles risk. The first is that if you are not fully vaccinated against measles, you are likely to get it if exposed.
Especially in those areas where there is measles disease now.
Second thing to know is that vitamin A can be toxic to kids if given to prevent measles. It's only recommended to help treat measles. Pediatric infectious disease specialist Dr. Robert Frank told me if a child is hospitalized from it.
Then the recommendation is to give 2 doses of vitamin A because it looks like it could decrease the risk of serious measles.
Third thing to know is that there's a new next morning PCR test for measles now available nationwide. Health Tracks RX, which provided this video, recently launched this new service through hundreds of urgent care and emergency rooms across the country. I spoke with their chief scientific officer, Dr. Jay Reddy.
We built our company based on speed to result.
If you think you've been exposed to measles, ask your doctor about quick option testing sites.
Regional outbreaks are kind of common with measles. What you don't want is something that gets more national.
Now, it's not just the outbreaks in the U.S. that is raising concern right now. As we head into the summer season or the travel season, the CDC warns that there are global outbreaks as well, particularly in Asia. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Coming up, the action being taken in California to close a loophole that allows violent criminals to get out of prison early. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in California with a big aimed at supporting victims of violent crime.
Our justice system has to change. They have committed heinous crimes and shouldn't be free to commit crimes again.
Survivors of violent crimes are showing support for Senate Bill 286. Cameron Hooker holding her as a sex slave at his home in Red Bluff for 7 years between 1970.
Criminals. Within it, Section 2106 reads that a person commits an offense if he engages in deeds at the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled 6-3 states cannot regulate private sexual acts between consenting adults.
Coming up next, the first professional athlete to get a Barbie doll made in their likeness. We'll tell you more right after the break. For watching. We'll see you tonight.